This is Hittin' 50, the fitness and wellness podcast serving the over 50 community. I'm your host, Chris Cotnor. Welcome to episode 6 of the Hittin' 50 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cotnor. This week's episode focuses on adapting our fitness routines to fit our changing bodies and lifestyles. Before we get to the episode, I just wanted to remind you that if you are enjoying the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps with discoverability. You can follow me on Twitter at @CCotnor, Instagram at @CCotnor, Facebook at Christopher Cotnor, and LinkedIn at Chris Cotnor. You can also subscribe to my Substack newsletter at hittin50.substack.com. And finally, I've just started the Hittin' 50 YouTube channel, which I will link to in the show notes. Now, if you're like me, you might remember the days when you could run for miles, lift heavy weights, or join any fitness class without a second thought about the aftermath. But as we cruise into our 50s and beyond, our bodies start to write checks that our muscles sometimes can't cash. But here's the good news. Getting older doesn't mean we have to give up on fitness. As we've been explaining throughout the course of these episodes, staying fit, active, and healthy becomes even more important as we age. Let's start with the concept of functional fitness. This isn't about preparing for a marathon or setting a new deadlift record. It's about training our bodies to handle everyday activities like carrying groceries, climbing stairs, or even getting up from a chair with grace and strength. These movements focus on balance, flexibility, and endurance. Next, there's something to be said for low-impact exercises. Activities like swimming, cycling, yoga, or even a brisk walk. They pack a punch in terms of health benefits without the harsh impact on your joints that can come from high-intensity workouts. And the best part? They can be just as effective in keeping our heart health in check and our muscles engaged. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, because I've thought it too. I love my high-intensity workouts, and you don't have to give them up. It's about moderation and mixing it up. Incorporate days where you go hard and days where you keep it light. Listen to your body. It's the best coach you'll ever have. Let's not forget about strength training, which we devoted an entire episode to. You don't need to lift like you're competing for medals, but incorporating light weights, resistant bands, or even bodyweight exercises into your routine can make a monumental difference. It's all about preserving muscle strength, supporting bone health, and boosting your metabolism. So as we continue to age, let's redefine what fitness means to us. It's not about maintaining the same pace or intensity as in our youth. It's about adapting, overcoming, and finding new ways to enjoy movement. Every step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. Remember, aging isn't about slowing down. It's about moving wisely. Our first guest this week is Christine Boyer-Zazzaro, who joins to talk about her personal exercise modifications, how she encourages potential clients to get into the gym, and once they're there, working with them to avoid injury. Take a listen. I'd like to welcome back Christine Boyer-Zazzaro to the show. Christine is a certified personal trainer, and welcome back.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's great to be back.
I've talked a lot this episode about adaptations that we have to make as we age. And in our prep for this discussion, you mentioned that you yourself have done or have made some changes to your exercise routine. So maybe you can start by talking a little bit about your own changes.
Well, Chris, I was a pretty avid runner through my 20s, 30s, and into my 40s. But as I got into my 40s, I discovered that I started having a little bit more back issues with the constant pounding. I mean, I literally would run 4 to 6 miles 4 to 6 times a week without, pure runs, usually like 10-minute miles, anywhere from 9 to 10-minute miles. But then as I started getting more back issues, I realized I needed to modify this. And I didn't want to give up running, though, because you're a runner and runners know it's just such an addiction. The high that you get from running is like no other. And so I started modifying my running program to doing more interval training. So I would walk like probably 13-minute miles, so like 4.5, 4.6, And then I would go for like a minute or 2 minutes, and I would run 6.0, which is a 10-minute mile. And I would just do intervals. And that's pretty much what I've continued to do. And I find that I don't experience the back issues as much. I'm able to do it and still get that thrill of running.
Did you find it hard to do that? You were a competitive surfer. You're a personal trainer. Did your ego get in the way of making those changes when you knew you could at one point run much faster? How did you deal with it?
Well, that's a funny question that you should ask, because actually initially in my 40s, I God forbid somebody saw me out running and then I'm walking, and all of a sudden I walk. I was like, if one of my clients saw me walking, I would just get I was horrified. But as you realize that you have to do what's best for your body and that you do need to make modifications, I got over that whole issue of walking rather than running. So yes, it was hard initially, but now I feel so much better, and I have no problem with anyone seeing me walking rather than running.
I'm laughing because I frequently see people that I know on runs, whether they're running themselves or they're in their cars, or they tell me afterward, I saw you running. And I'm always like, oh, well, where? Because I want to know if they saw me on a hill, if they saw me at mile 2 versus mile 6, because I don't necessarily want to look bad either. And I think that leads me to my next question, which is I think a lot of people in this sort of AARP category, the over 50 crowd, doesn't start exercising because they're afraid of looking foolish or they're afraid of getting injured. How do you convince those people, to give it a shot?
That's such a great point, because so many people that are older that are just getting into a fitness program are so self-conscious about it because they're sort of getting their toes wet into an area they're not familiar with. And once they come a few sessions and they get more comfortable and they're able to see that they're making progress. I mean, I think progress is key. That you're accomplishing some of the goals that you set. You've seen that you're getting stronger. It sort of kind of reels them in, and it makes it easier for them to get more into it. And then they realize the importance from a health aspect, that it's extremely important to continue to exercise, to develop bone strength and muscle strength, and for a variety of reasons.
You think everyone's looking at you, everyone's judging you, everyone wants to know, what'd you shoot on the golf course? How fast did you run? How many miles did you go? How much weight did you lift? And the thing is, nobody really cares. In terms of, once they are clients and, once they started coming and getting more comfortable, how do you help them prevent injury through warm-ups and cool-downs?
Well, that's, another very good point. It's important I always have my clients warm up first. It's very important for them to warm up. So whether it's on a bike or a treadmill or elliptical, I want to get their blood flowing, the oxygen flowing through their body, just to get their whole body sort of warm. Because a lot of times they're just driving from home or driving from the office and they've been sitting most of the day. So I encourage them to warm up, and then we do some light stretching. And then throughout the entire workout session, we do incorporate various stretches depending upon if they do have like a shoulder issue or what have you. But the end of the session is always about nice long stretches. We hold a stretch for 30 seconds. It could be, hamstring stretches and quad stretches and lower back stretches. But it's very, very important to warm up via some type of cardio equipment and light stretching, and then to get into the workout and then follow up with stretching as well.
Are there, and I like to end with the success stories, are there clients that, who were initially reluctant to come into the gym in the first place, who you watched, not only overcome that, but become good athletes or better at what they were, doing before they came to you?
Yes. I mean, I had a client, he was always an overachiever in life and was a big time runner. And the doctor said to him, your knees are in really bad shape. You've got to stop running. And he did. And then he stopped. He did nothing. He got to the gym, started training with me. We were able to strengthen his legs. I introduced him to the elliptical. He now absolutely loves the elliptical. it's sort of kind of taken the place of running for him, but it's saved his knees. He hasn't had knee surgery at all. Through strengthening of the legs, he's been able to avoid that, and he found something else to replace the running, which has been just wonderful in his life.
That's great. Well, Christine, I really appreciate your time. And I just want to say, I think what we're going to try to do in future episodes is to do some how-to videos with you in the gym so that people can actually see how to do exercises properly. So hopefully we can figure all of that stuff out. But thanks once again for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I really look forward to getting in the gym and showing our viewers what they can do in the gym as well. So that's exciting. Thank you.
In the coming weeks, Christine and I will be working on a segment called In the Gym with Christine, in which we'll not only explain the proper techniques for doing specific exercises, but we'll also post how-to videos on the Hittin' 50 YouTube channel. My next guest is Rebecca Dickinson. We explore the impacts of alcohol consumption on the gut microbiome. Here is that conversation. Hi, I'd like to welcome Rebecca Dickinson back to the show. Rebecca is a certified nurse and a holistic health coach. So welcome back, Rebecca.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
So if people didn't get the message last week that I am absolutely fascinated by the gut and the gut microbiome and all the things that are impacted by balancing your gut, what I wanted to talk to you today about is the impact of alcohol on the gut microbiome. It's not a judgy type of thing that we're talking about here. I'm just interested to understand how alcohol consumption can impact it.
Sure, absolutely. So, it's well known that, heavy drinking is going to impact the gut. I mean, you can experience those effects. I mean, most people who are had too much to drink and are hungover the next day can only imagine. I mean, if you were to repeat that over and over again, that would certainly impact your body in profound ways. But there is some emerging research to suggest that even moderate levels of drinking can impact the gut microbiome. So in the most recent studies that they have done, it's suggesting that even after just one alcoholic drink, within 30 minutes, a bacterial endotoxin rises within your bloodstream, which is suggesting that that bacterial endotoxin is linked with inflammation throughout the body, and that is suggesting that even just one drink is affecting our gut microbiome in a negative way. So I believe that the CDC guidelines for safe consumption of alcohol for women is no more than one alcoholic beverage a day, and for men, no more than two. But, based off of this newer research, it is almost seemingly deleterious to even have the one drink a day.
Yeah, so that was my second question, because the research, that I came across suggested that heavy drinkers were more likely to develop issues with the gut. But it seems like moderate drinking is also impactful.
Yes.
One of the other things I kind of wondered about is, obviously alcohol impairs our decision making. Maybe an indirect result of consuming alcohol is making bad food choices. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would completely agree with that. I mean, everybody's inhibitions drop when they've had a couple of, alcoholic beverages, and you're definitely more likely to indulge in, food that probably you wouldn't indulge in if you hadn't had, that drink or two. And when you're out drinking, bear in mind that, in all instances, you're out, with, some friends, and you're maybe gathered around a table, and you're probably making food choices just because you're out in a restaurant that maybe you wouldn't be making at home anyway. And then you throw in a couple of drinks, and dessert is definitely going to happen.
Yeah, and you've mentioned in previous episodes about leaky gut, and I think the research suggests that at least heavy drinking can impact and make your gut leakier.
Absolutely. So what ends up happening when you consume alcohol is that it ends up feeding the pro-inflammatory bacteria versus the bacteria that have a very nice symbiotic relationship with us, that help keep that inflammation levels down. And we've discussed that in the past. So if you are consuming alcohol and you have an increase in these pro-inflammatory bacteria, it's going to be very impactful within the gut. And we talked about that last week about how, if you are consuming fiber, you're getting that byproduct of those short chain fatty acids, which helps do that repair work locally within the gut to kind of tighten up all those junctions. Well, alcohol is doing the reverse. So the pro-inflammatory bacteria is loosening those junctions and allowing more things to get into the bloodstream that really shouldn't be there. Predisposing us to inflammation, systemically.
In one of my conversations with Christine Boyer-Zazzaro, one of her clients, she said, "Oh, well, let's get some water." He said, "I don't really drink water," and she said, "What do you mean you don't drink water?" So yeah, just my wife's on me about drinking water, but what I do is I put extra ice cubes in my bourbon so that I'm getting my water. So maybe the answer is you have to stir in a little Metamucil into your alcoholic beverage to balance the new alcoholic beverage. It automatically balances your gut. But yeah, as I continued to talk to you about all of these, nutritional elements and the gut specifically, and we started this whole thing off talking about gut health, and I was a little bit skeptical, and I'm not skeptical anymore. I am completely 100% all in on how that is so impactful. And I'm sure, as I think of things over the coming weeks, I'll do a little research. I want to see, how this is impacting things, how that is impacting things. I'm sure there are, medications. I mean, there's probably so many things. We throw all this out to people, and it's information. It's information so you can make your own decisions. It's not, we're not
preaching and judging.
No. You want to have a couple of drinks with your friends, please, by all means. That's part of socializing, and frankly, contributes to your mental well-being as well.
It's celebratory as well. Aside from the fact that alcohol can affect your gut microbiome, it also can increase, other things that, are uncomfortable. So if you've ever experienced acid reflux, wine is an extremely acidic beverage, and it can absolutely contribute to acid reflux. And when you drink alcohol, the sphincter that sits between the stomach and the esophagus relaxes. So it's less likely that it's going to keep all those contents within your stomach. So you have an alcoholic beverage and you could end up, refluxing all night long and reaching for your, Tums or Pepcid or one of those over-the-counter acid-reducing medications.
One of the decisions a couple of years ago that I made, we went through, obviously, the pandemic, and I remember in the beginning just getting deliveries of beverages to our house. And then,
Yes.
I think, and then we just, I got to the point where a night out, yeah, it's fun and great and all of that, but my preference was, to be alert and
100%.
Yeah,
As I've gotten older, I couldn't agree with you more. I feel the effects of even just one glass of wine on my body the next day. It impacts my sleep as well. So, that's another thing to look at, because proper rest is important for overall health as well. So if you're having an alcoholic beverage every evening, and, the CDC is saying one beverage a night for a woman is sort of within limits, but it's affecting your sleep every single night, well, maybe it's not. And maybe it's something that should just be consumed on occasion. So I've kind of taken a hard look at that too, because I do enjoy a glass of wine. And I, like you, during the pandemic, probably drank more wine than I should have. But I've cut back significantly on that, to the point where, Saturday night, sure, go out to dinner with my husband, have a glass of wine, enjoy it with a meal. But during the week, not at all.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. And certainly it takes the edge off. It's nice. It's, hanging with friends. But I've also noticed a lot more people, even within my friend circle, who are choosing either, not to drink at all, or have cut back significantly. Yeah. And I've also noticed that, visits to my primary care physician frequently focus on questions around alcohol consumption, because I feel like this is a bigger issue. The people who live to 120 aside, who, said, I drink whiskey every day and I did all of these things, which I'm sure was great, but I'm sure a lot of it had to do with genetics.
I'm thinking so too. I mean, because they also will say, and I smoked cigarettes every day.
Yeah. Exactly. A lot of it's genetics. They're smokers that never get lung cancer. And then of course, there are others that do. Your genetic makeup plays a big role in that.
Sure does.
Well, Rebecca, as always, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. See you soon.
My final guest this week is Linda Magid. Linda discusses the importance of warm-ups and cool-downs, types of stretching to help avoid injury, and how she encourages her class to give it their all without overdoing it. I'd like to welcome back Linda Magid to the podcast. Linda is a certified Pilates instructor, and she had the week off last week, but I'm glad to have her back this week, so welcome back.
Thank you.
So we've been talking a lot about what I consider to be the 4 pillars of living a healthful lifestyle, which includes mental well-being, exercise, sleep, and nutrition. And so I try to cover those areas off for the most part each week. Last week, we focused pretty much entirely on mental health. And this week, I'm focusing on adapting or working out safely, or, essentially doing what you need to do without necessarily hurting yourself. Because as we age, we can't do the things that we did when we were 20 years old. So with that kind of said, my first question to you, Linda, today is, what are some of the ways that you encourage your class participants to give their all, but not necessarily overdo it?
That's such a good question, because as a group fitness instructor, I'm working with 15, 20, 25 people. Everybody has their own goal. Everybody has their own abilities. And I definitely have to cater almost to like different groups of people in the room. So I have people who are maybe 35 to 45, typically men, who will like push themselves harder. Like I find that men don't kind of have that, oh, I'm not as young as I used to be attitude. They're like, I can still do everything. And I just let them do what they do. And like, I don't really address them to like pull it back at all, because I feel like that's up to them. I mean, they know their bodies better than I do. But if one of them tells me that he's injured, which has happened, because people tell me, hey, I hurt my back or I hurt my elbow or whatever. I may not do what I typically do in class. I will kind of say, are you, like during class, I'll walk around. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you taking care? Are you being smart right now? Because I find that they'll forget, and they'll forget that they're injured, or they'll think, oh, I can push through, which isn't always the best thing. Then I have older women who are afraid to do more. And how I work with them is I will encourage as a class to push themselves. Maybe we're doing a squat series and I'll say, can you go a little lower? And typically everyone will go a little bit lower if I encourage them like that. Sometimes I'll walk up to someone and actually say, I think you're ready for more. So in a class yesterday, we were doing a push-up with a glider, and this woman was on her knees, and she was going all the way down to the ground. She was moving faster than the music. And I was like, she doesn't need to be on her knees. She could definitely do it on her toes. So I walked up to her and I just pulled my microphone down so it wasn't for the whole class. And I said, I think you're ready to do a full push-up. Because then it's a private conversation in a way. I mean, other people around can hear, but I'm not pointing them out. Some people don't like that. But it's a small encouragement. And if I tell them to do it, they'll try it. And so I feel like I have to kind of go each way. And then sometimes I'll say, hey, you know what you can do, but I think you can do more. And just put it in their head to push a little bit, because women need that more than the men do.
I think your point about the men in terms of their thoughts around pushing harder is relevant. But I would say for me, in my own fitness journey, it's been a difficult transition to be able to continue with sort of the intensity that I want to go at without getting myself hurt. And I use like basketball as an example. I played a ton. I should have been studying, but I was playing a lot of basketball when I was at Syracuse back in the day, missing classes to play basketball, intramural basketball. I put basketball all the time. I was aggressive, loose balls. I mean, I was diving on the floor. I'm not doing any of that stuff today. I like to play. I can still hold my own, but I'm not going to risk injury, to go the extra mile. I'm playing with my friends and I'm just trying to have a good time. But in terms of one of the things that I never used to do was stretch. And, as I've gotten older, I've recognized the importance of stretching and different types of stretching for different types of activities. So you can talk a little bit about the importance of preparing your body and stretching before and after workouts.
Yes, absolutely. I do want to go back to what you're saying, though, about not doing the things that you did when you were younger. I think our brains know we can't do that, and so we don't do it. But also, I think there are some people who, if you do it from your 20s all the way into your 50s, you could still, if you did it at the same intensity. But our lives don't really work that way. You didn't really have the time because you were skipping class, but you thought you had the time during college to go do that. And then life changed. And then you're like, okay, well, now I need a job. I can't be playing basketball at that level that often throughout my 20s and 30s, and you have a family. And so things change. And so your body isn't used to that anymore. Someone who is doing some intense levels of weightlifting, and they do it through the decades, they could probably do it in their, when they're older. But most people aren't like that. And that's fine. And I guess, when I was talking about different ages, I think that people are aware of what their limitations are when they come to a class. And I work with them to cater to those limitations, like being able to modify, but still working hard. I'm always trying to get people to push themselves in their abilities, not in my ability or in someone else's ability. As far as stretching it's not just about stretching, but it's flexibility. So flexibility, as we know, like everything else, decreases as we age. But flexibility allows for more range of motion in your joints. You can reach up higher, you can reach down lower, you can reach over the side, all those things that we don't think of the terms range of motion, but the way we move. So we're more free in our movements with more flexibility. And then that decreases over time. There's other things about flexibility, though, besides range of motion that are important. Our cartilage in our joints relies on motion for nutrients and to stay healthy. So the less we move, the fewer nutrients get to the cartilage and the less healthy the cartilage is. And we know that cartilage is the cushion in our joints. And so our joints can hurt. More flexibility improves the communication between our brain and our body and our muscles. And we've already talked about how important that communication is, even when we were talking about balance in a previous episode, how important that communication is. So flexibility increases that. It increases our blood flow and circulation. It increases our production of our synovial fluid in our joints. This, I think, is so fascinating. The more we move, the more fluid we build up in our joints, and the better we feel. That's why when people have arthritis, they're told by their doctors, you need to move, which is counterintuitive because movement hurts. But people with arthritis will say when they start moving, they feel better because they're doing all the things I just talked about. Increasing range of motion, blood flow, circulation, increasing fluid in the joints. That's why we need to stay flexible as we age. What's changed about stretching is that it's no longer advised to stretch before you exercise. You can do dynamic stretching, which is stretching while you move, as opposed to a static stretch, which is holding a stretch, because you're not warmed up. So warming up by moving your body, you could walk on the treadmill, a light jog, whatever your abilities are, and add some dynamic stretching, that's fine for before, but we're no longer holding stretches. When you stretch at the end of a workout, you are stretching to get your muscles back to where they were when you started the workout. That's not necessarily for increased flexibility. Your muscles shorten as you exercise, and so you stretch to get them back to where you can move like you regularly move in your life. If you want to increase flexibility, then that is like a focused effort. You don't have to do yoga to do it, but it's a focused effort where you're spending time holding poses, stretches for 30 seconds or more. And that's how you increase flexibility. So just to kind of keep those separate, it's important to stretch after workout because you don't want to hurt yourself with shortened muscles. But if you want to increase flexibility, you have to focus on it.
Yeah, that's one of the lessons that I've also learned throughout this, where dynamic stretching and moving around and warming up, frankly, especially before runs, is something that I definitely didn't do. I was doing a lot of static stretching before runs, which obviously wasn't as beneficial because it wasn't warmed up. But one of the other things, the sort of harder lessons is, I made no secret. I use the Peloton platform pretty religiously, and there are lots of rides, runs, exercises that are called low impact. But low impact doesn't necessarily mean low effort. It's essentially, a bit less on the intensity. When I look at the work that I do on the bike, it's essentially not getting out of the seat. But maybe talk a little bit about, the benefits of low impact workouts and how that might differ from some of your other classes that are more higher impact.
Sure. So I think low impact has a bad rap because people, like you said, think that means easy. But low impact just means a lower impact on your joints. High impact would be jumping, running, anything where you're just really are doing a lot of, you need a lot of shocks for the movement. There's different, like in Zumba, I teach a high impact Zumba, but of course people are doing whatever they want to do in my class, but I'm high impact. I am jumping, I'm moving as big as I can because that's the kind of class I want to have for myself. I would say that low impact is lifting weights, is low impact in that you're not lifting up off the ground. And so I don't really like to use those terms because if you say low impact, then people think, oh, well, I don't really want to do that. That doesn't sound very hard. That doesn't sound very challenging. Bar is considered low impact, and the intensity that people feel, the muscle burn that people feel in that class is very high. It just means we're doing smaller movements. Same with my strength classes. When we're not doing the cardio, people are lifting 15, 20, 25 pounds in that class in each hand for their squats and their lunges. That's just low impact because it's not a high impact on the joints. That's how I relate to that. And I think that as we age, we do need to focus more on low impact because our joints can't take that kind of pressure. and that's okay. You can still get a good cardio workout without high impact. You just have to be smart about it. So if you're on a treadmill and you can't run faster, you can increase the angle of the treadmill to increase your heart rate. But if you're walking, don't hold on to the treadmill while it inclines, because then you're not actually using your legs as much and you're not using your heart as much. I've seen that at the gym and that drives me nuts. I hate when people do that. So increase the incline. If you're on an elliptical, same thing. You can increase the tension. You can increase the incline. Of course, you're not doing any high impact on elliptical because your feet are in contact with the pads. So that's really where you want to look. You just want to be smart about what you're doing to your joints.
Point about low impact is funny because I'll take low impact workouts on what I would consider to be more recovery days versus rest days. And the instructors are always happy to point out that low impact does not equal low effort and low intensity.
That's right.
It just means that you're not putting pressure on your joints, which
right.
Again, it's humbling. I mean, it's still, at the end of the day, like, I want to set PBs and go 100 miles an hour, but you got to take a step back every once in a while.
Yeah. And I think you have to pace yourself. If you want to do something really challenging, think about the couple of days before and what you're going to do. I do that with skiing. When I go skiing, I'm not really a skier. I'm a beginner skier, but I do know that it's hard. And I have to think about, well, if I'm skiing tomorrow, I probably should not be lifting with my heaviest, or Friday should not be leg day if Saturday is skiing day, because I want to have as much energy as possible for that ski day. And who cares if no one's watching me to see how much I'm lifting? No one cares about what I've done and what I've done at the gym. I'm doing it for myself. And I think sometimes we get into mental competitions with other people, and we need to watch that, because when we're younger, it doesn't matter. You can have as much competition in your head as you want, but as you age, it just doesn't bring us any benefit, and it can actually be harmful.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, that literally nobody cares how much weight you're lifting. Nobody cares how far you ran or how fast it was. Or how far you biked. It's the bottom line is it's getting out and staying active. Linda, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your insights and hope to see you next week.
Thank you so much.
With that, episode 6 of the Hittin' 50 podcast comes to a close. New episodes are available each Monday. Until then, stay healthy, everyone. Bye-bye.